Welcome everyone to Piedmont, Wyoming. So today we're going to talk about this ghost town and a little bit of Old West history and a couple names you might know that at least passed through this town. Welcome to Discover This.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So out here in Uinta County, Wyoming in 1866, the Guild family and the Byrne family came together at what was the Muddy River Station, which is about 5 miles back east from here. See, the Transcontinental Railroad was coming west through this area, and a wood and water station was needed for the railroad, and a perfect place was found here where we are standing now. See, the Guild family and the Byrne family had traveled from Salt Lake City, Utah, to basically get in on the action. Both Moses Byrne and Charles Guild were Mormon pioneers. Moses Byrne had two wives, Ann Bias and Catherine Carden, while Charles Guild had one wife, Marie Carden. Yes, Catherine Carden and Marie Carden were sisters. Now Moses' wife Ann stayed behind in Ogden, Utah. Moses Byrne was asked by the railroad to run the station they were building here, and he decided to call the town Byrne. Well, the railroad thought that would cause some confusion because there was a railroad town called Bryan not too far from here. Now, the family of Catherine and Marie Carden were from small towns in the Piedmont region of northern Italy. So Moses Byrne settled on calling this town Piedmont. Piedmont was initially a tent city for railroad workers, laying the railroad bed and getting the rail bed laid up the steep incline towards the town of Aspen, west of here. There were lots of trees in this area to provide wood for the railroad ties, and Moses Byrne built 5 charcoal kilns. Ox teams brought aspen and pine logs from the surrounding area to the kilns where they were burned into charcoal. And then they were placed on the Union Pacific Railroad and shipped elsewhere and sometimes used for fuel. Homes started being built in town. Charles Guild established one of the first ranches in this area. A school was built, and the Guilds opened the town mercantile or general store. 4 saloons were also eventually built. See, because of the steep incline west of here, helper engines were needed to help the trains get up the grade. It was an 8-mile grade, so men were needed to run those helper engines, and a whole infrastructure was built to support the helper engines. Wells were dug. Plenty of water was here in this area. Maintenance buildings and a railroad siding were also built. Homesteaders started arriving and settling this area and raising crops and cattle. Piedmont was kind of booming. In fact, the saloons were very popular with the soldiers from Fort Bridger, which is about 10 miles or so east of here. Now, a young gal by the name of Martha Jane Canary made her way to Piedmont around 1869 after both her parents died, and she was placed with several different relatives that didn't seem to work out. According to census records at the time, her age was listed as 15. Reportedly, she lived and worked at a boarding house in town and also earned some money as an in-house babysitter. She was considered somewhat of a wild child and would go dancing with the soldiers that came into town and would also dress in men's clothing sometimes. She was so wild it was reported that she was fired from her job at the boarding house. It's not known how long Martha Jane Canary lived here in Piedmont, but after she left, she got really wild and ended up being known as Calamity Jane. In 1896, an outlaw named Butch Cassidy met up with his cohorts, Bob Meeks and Elsie Lay, here in Piedmont. And together they rode northwest of here, where on August 13th, 1896, they robbed the bank in Montpelier, Idaho. Now, as a side note, the money Butch Cassidy got from that specific bank robbery went to hire defense lawyers for his friend and fellow outlaw, Matt Warner, who was in jail in Utah. In 1910, the railroad started digging a tunnel in Aspen to alleviate having to make that steep grade. Once the tunnel was finished, the railroad was rerouted, and it missed Piedmont by a few miles. So Piedmont and its helper engines were no longer needed. In 1940, the Guild Mercantile store finally closed, and a number of the buildings were hauled away. What's left is what you see here today. So that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for this story about Piedmont, Wyoming. Appreciate you taking the time to watch. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And we will see you on the next Discover This.